Ever thought about using your retirement funds to buy real estate? Welcome to episode 13.
Congratulations, you finally found it. Welcome to the show that helps thousands with real estate, money, and a whole lot more. Now here is our host, best-selling author, Shane Willis.
All right, so welcome to this week's episode. This week, I got a good one for you this week. I actually have a friend of mine from Sense Financial, Dmitry Pomincheko. I think that's how you said it. Is that close enough, Dmitry?
Close enough.
Okay, thank you. He's the owner and founder of Sense Financial, who helps set up individual IRAs and individual 401ks. Now, why do I bring that onto our Real Estate Money and More podcast? Well, it's not just the money part on this one. You actually can buy real estate inside of your retirement fund. Now, I know that's a huge question, Dmitry, but I wanted to bring it up immediately because obviously people are going to be asking right here at the beginning of the show why we're talking about individual retirement accounts on a real estate show. But first of all, thank you for coming on.
Sure, you're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here and to educate your listeners on this subject.
Okay, now let's talk about this. You can access, not everybody's 401k and IRA did all that well over the last couple of years. We all kind of took a beating from the stock market. But a lot of people are unaware of the fact that you can buy stuff besides stocks, mutual funds, money market accounts, that you can actually buy real estate or real estate derivatives with your retirement account. Kind of walk me through what I can and can't buy.
Sure, Shane, that's true. Now, first of all, before I even jump into that, let me just clarify something. If you have a retirement account that is with your current employer, for example, if you're working for a company and they offer a 401k there and you're participating in that and contributing and you have a balance there, most likely you're not going to be able to touch that and you're not going to be able to self-direct that type of retirement account. In most cases, there are some exceptions, but typically current employer 401k or any other type of qualified retirement account are not eligible to be converted into self-directed. However, if you do have a 401k or 403b with a past employer and you're no longer working there, or if you have a traditional IRA or Roth IRA or simple IRA, those types of accounts can be self-directed. You can self-direct them. So basically the first step is the problem, Shane, that you mentioned is that most people, and I talk to people like that every single day, when they have retirement accounts and they're looking at their statements over the last few years, and they've seen the balance kind of going up and down. But if you look at the long range, the last 5 to 10 years, you'll see hardly any gains there, and that's very disappointing. That's not the way your retirement account should be. It should be growing because you're building those assets, the nest egg for the future, so you can one day stop working and live off of that. And unfortunately, it's not happening for most folks. And if you go to your current custodian, if you have an IRA with Wells Fargo, or if you have a 401k with Fidelity, you go to them and say, hey, I just been on this great podcast with Shane. I want to buy investment property in my retirement account. How can I do that? Well, guess what they're going to tell you? They either going to laugh back at you, or they say, no, you cannot do that. And the problem is that your current custodian does not allow that. It's not that you cannot do it. The current custodian does not allow that. So the solution is to move away from that custodian. And that's what we offer. We offer a self-directed structure where you can set up a self-directed IRA or 401k. And actually, you can be in charge of the investment choices rather than being limited by the custodian, your current custodian. You can move away from that custodian, set up your own self-directed account, and you will be in charge. And there is a few limitations. I can go over that later, but there is a pretty much virtually limitless investment options that are available to you.
Okay, so yeah, let me make sure that I understand correctly, because that was a lot of information very very quickly. So if I have a current employer that I work for, and I want to try and use the 401k that's with them, more than likely I'm not going to be able to use that because I'm still working for them. Correct?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly right. Because you're still working there, the custodian and administrator and the employer, they have those limitations. You will not be able to touch those funds. Now, of course, you can take a early distribution. It's your money. You can take an early distribution, but you're going to be taxed and penalized on that. So that's not the way to go.
Right. Okay.
But you won't be able
there's a lot of people that have a lot of old 401ks, an old IRA, from other companies, 403bs. Like when I came to you, I had some stuff from when I was a professor at the universities. I had some old 403bs, a couple of IRAs. We kind of consolidated them because in my personal plan, they were scattered all over the place. I had stocks and mutual funds that I honestly didn't even know about. But I wanted to buy real estate derivatives. Now, we'll talk a little bit about derivatives later on in the show, but whether I want to buy a house or derivatives or even precious metals or art, all of this is open, correct?
Exactly. This is all available and this is all open to you. Again, the problem, as I mentioned, is your current custodian. The current custodian that holds your assets of your retirement account, they are dictating you the choices. So if you, and I remember when I used to work for a company and I had a 401k, the representative from the company will come up to us about once or twice a year, and all the employees, all the participants of the 401k will come up, and he will give us a sheet that will have about a dozen investment choices, just a few mutual funds, and that's pretty much all you can do. So they limit the investment choices for you. When you have a self-directed IRA, then you go and play by the IRS rules, and the IRS does not have a list of permissible investments. What the IRS has is basically IRS says there is a certain things that you cannot invest in your retirement account, and it's very short list. And let me give that to you. Number one, you cannot invest in collectibles using your retirement account, and collectibles can be artwork. It can be coins, can be collectible stamps. So anything that is considered collectible, you cannot invest in with your retirement account. Number two, you cannot invest in the subchapter S corporation. The reason for that because S corporation shareholders have to be a physical person. So you can invest in other types of corporations like C Corp with your retirement account, but not S Corp. And then finally, with an IRA, you're not allowed to invest in life insurance contracts. So those are the only three investments that are not allowed. Anything else is pretty much up to you.
Okay. So, and I didn't know about the life insurance contracts because I know there's still some viaticals out there that a lot of people like to invest in and are somewhat decent investments. But this is a real estate show, so we'll keep it away from the viaticals and the insurance. Okay, so I can invest. I can buy a rental property.
You definitely can buy a rental property. Once you set up a self-directed account and it is funded, then you can use your funds to buy a rental property. Now, keep in mind that when you buy an investment inside of your IRA or 401k, you personally cannot do any work on the property. You cannot provide any services to the property. Or to the investment, you cannot receive any personal benefits from that. So, for example, if you buy a rental property inside of your retirement account, you can't go and do any work. You can't replace a lock on the door when the tenant leaves. You have to hire somebody else, third-party person to do the work. What you can do is you can, write the check and pay the bills. You can collect the rent and deposit that into your account, but you cannot provide any services or do any work, and you personally cannot benefit. So let me give you one example. I do have a client who owns a vacation rental in his 401k, and he personally is prohibited from staying in that vacation rental or any of his immediate family members. In other words, you cannot receive personally any benefits from that. It has to be arm's length transaction.
Okay, I understand, and that's something that's very key when people are looking at buying actual real estate inside of their self-directed. You need to budget for a management company, really, because I know I have quite a few clients that are with you that have a self-directed 401k, and one of them has a self-directed IRA. They buy the property, but let's make sure we clarify when we set this self-directed 401k or IRA, whatever it is, up. We are creating a separate entity, correct?
Exactly. That's very well stated. The IRA or 401k is a separate entity from yourself, so it's not you. Now, you are the account holder of that IRA or 401k, but for this particular scenario, we're going to use that as it's completely separate entity from you. Now, you're managing it, you have control over that, but it's completely separate. And when you buy a property inside of your 401k, you don't own that property. Your 401k does. The title to the property is taken in the name of the 401k. When you, we specialize in providing a checkbook control over the retirement account. So when you open up a checking account in the name of the 401k, then it's going to be in the name of the 401k using the 401k tax ID number, not your personal Social Security number. So it's going to be completely separate from you.
And I want to make sure I clarify one thing, because you brought up a good point, and I know the difference, but I want to make sure that the listeners know the difference. You guys specialize in what's called a checkbook, self-directed. There are other companies out there that help you put a self-directed 401k or help you put a self-directed IRA, but when you go to buy a property, they have to approve it. And it's a pretty long, drawn-out process, too.
Correct. Yeah, there is a number of custodians. They call custodians, and the custodian is the company that holds the assets, basically has the custody of your retirement account. And that's when you set up an account, they hold the funds or the assets, and when you're ready to make the investment, you have to go through them every time to do an investment or to conduct any transaction. And yes, that can be that can slow down you significantly. It can provide some inconveniences. So our model, the checkbook control, gives you the power. It eliminates the middleman, the third-party custodian, and you are actually in control. So you literally have a checkbook control over your retirement account.
Right, and it said a little conveniences. He was actually being nice, just so I can clarify, because I've had clients, as I represented a seller, then another agent would bring a buyer that had a client that had a self-directed with one of these other custodians, as Dimitri's talking about. And it probably took us about 8 weeks to close, because it took about 3.5 weeks just to get the contract signed, because the contract had to be reviewed step by step. So having this checkbook has always been, in my mind, I have instant access. I can sign a contract today as the corporation or the 401k, because I'm in charge of it. Right, Dimitri? Make sure I'm not saying this wrong.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Shannon. I'm going to give you an example. I actually do attend a number of real estate meetings and networking events, and a lot of people are doing deals right there. You know, there is a wholesaler who comes to the meeting, and he secured the property. He has the contract on the property. It's a great deal. And so he offers that to an investor. You know, he's just going to make a few $1,000s by providing this contract, and then investor will buy that. So if you have an IRA or 401k with a custodian, and you have this deal come to you, what you have to do is you have to submit the paperwork to the custodian, wait several days until they review that and approve it, and then you can only execute that transaction. But guess what? The deal is probably going to be gone by then. But having a checkbook control gives you the ability to immediately, that evening, if you have the checkbook with you, simply write the check to that individual, and you can secure the deal right there. So it's very, very powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I attend a lot of those meetings too. I've seen those deals happen. I've participated in those deals all the time. Here in Florida, I know you're out in the West Coast, but here in Florida, we still have our share of foreclosures, and the foreclosure banks will not wait that long. So even if you found a great deal and secured a good price with a bid, the foreclosure banks will not wait the week or two that it takes for you to get your custodian to sign off on it before they want the contract fully executed. Just like you said, you're going to lose that deal. So having that checkbook is a huge, huge benefit. And it's not just the actual real estate itself, because I teach a lot of my clients inside of a retirement account. I don't want to invest for a buy and hold real estate because I think you're doubling up, and I don't want to get too much into accounting, but I think you're doubling up some of your tax benefits if you're holding a buy and hold real estate inside of a retirement account. And you may correct me, you might know more than I do on this subject. You obviously own that company. But in my mind, and one of the things I teach my clients is it's definitely for that property, like you found that wholesaler that's willing to give you, $2,000 extra. You can get some work flip the property, make an extra $10, $20, $30, $50, $100,000. It comes back into the IRA, and you can continue to do that. So we're looking more like trades. And in my mind, I actually use my 401k for derivatives like tax lien certificates, but we'll get to that in just a minute. But let's talk about holding rental property inside of an IRA. Aren't you losing some of the tax benefits of actually holding a property via deductibles and everything else?
Well, Shane, that's a good question, and it's a good subject to discuss. And I'm going to try to be short on this because we can actually have, or you can have a separate show just on this subject by itself. But, I think there is really no just one answer that fits everybody. I think in general, I agree with you that, and I personally prefer hold real estate long-term rentals in my own name so that I can get the tax benefits like depreciation deduction, and that lowers my taxable income, because when you hold a rental property inside of your retirement account, you don't get to receive the depreciation benefits. It doesn't affect your taxes because it's a tax-deferred account.
And that's a huge, Dimitri, I don't want to cut you off there, but that's a huge benefit of owning real estate with today's tax code. Is that depreciation?
Yeah, that's a great benefit, and it's a great tax deduction, and I've been using that for the last 14 years. I've been investing in real estate, so I think that's great. And
I love it. When I meet with my accountant every year, that's one of the first things I want to look at. What did I get for deductions?
Yeah.
What did I get for depreciation?
Exactly. So again, I think in general, it's better to keep rental properties in your own name, and then buy inside of a retirement account. Like what I'm personally doing is I'm buying trust deeds. I'm using my retirement account as a bank. I'm lending to other people who flipping properties or doing other things. But with that, let me just also add something, okay, just very quickly. It might be, it still might make sense to own real estate. And I had a deal come up to me about 2 years ago, and it was a property in Phoenix. It was a good deal. It was not on the market, and I wanted to get that deal. And I didn't have money personally. I couldn't do it in my own name, but I had money in my retirement account. And I actually purchased that property inside of my 401k. And I got it all rehabbed. It's already gained about $50,000 in equity in less than 2 years. And yes, I'm not receiving any tax benefits, but at that time, I didn't have a better investment for my 401k. I couldn't do it inside of my, in my own name. So I did it inside of my retirement account. And, at that time, it was a good decision, and it was overall a good decision for me. So, again,
that makes sense. And those deals are going to come up. And I think probably, I don't want to discourage, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I really don't want to discourage someone from locking out their 401k or their self-directed 401k from buying real estate, because Shane said you shouldn't own real estate inside of your IRA that you want to buy and hold. To a lot of people, their 401k or their IRA is their capital. I mean, that's the money that they have saved. They've worked hard for. They've set aside. So that is their capital. All we're saying is to try and deploy that in the best possible manner. And if that best manner for you in that particular situation in Phoenix was that property came up and it's appreciated in value, whether you sell it this year or next year, you've already increased your 401k $50,000. I don't think you can do that with a Bank of America stock over the last 2 years. You'll probably lose money if you did that. So I don't want to say you don't do it all together, but you bring up a great point. It's just deploying the capital in the best possible way, and you didn't have the capital outside of the 401k, but what you're giving your clients and the clients that I'm helping as well, you're giving them availability to their retirement funds.
Exactly, and you have to make a decision that is best for your particular situation, given the resources that you have available, given that the types of deals that you have access to at that time. So, and you need to evaluate everything and make a decision that is best for you in that particular situation. And it may or may not be buying a rental property in your retirement account.
But you had mentioned also lending. So you can actually, the 401k can lend money. Now let's be careful. It can't lend to me personally, can it?
Well, the 401k has a loan feature, and we didn't talk about that yet, but let me quickly mention that. Typically, retirement account, you can't use that or you cannot access the money in your retirement account until you reach normal retirement age, 60 or 65 years of age. Now, if you do pull money early, you're going to be taxed and penalized. But the 401k has a nice feature. It's called the participant loan. And that allows you to take a personal loan from your retirement account for up to $50,000, and you pay that back over 5 years. And so those funds can be used for any reason, and it's only available with the 401k, not with an IRA. It's not available with an IRA, but it is available with 401k. But the 401k and IRA retirement accounts in general can be used as a bank. You can be a private lender and you can lend money to other people. I'm using that personally. Number of my clients doing that. I really love this concept because being a landlord does require some time and attention and effort. You still need to manage, even if you have a property manager, you still need to manage your property manager for the most time.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, okay.
Yeah, but when I use my retirement dollars and I invest in a trust deed, I'm basically becoming a bank, and somebody else owns the property. They deal with the tenants, they deal with the repairs, and I'm getting my guaranteed return. The return is guaranteed contractually, and then my investment is secured. It's secured by real property with equity in it. So I think it's a low risk, very good return. I'm really pleased with these types of investments, and I'm transitioning portion of my portfolio in that because it's very attractive to me because it's passive investing.
Agreed. Okay, so I think I understand what you're saying, but we may have different terminologies, and it may just be an East Coast, West Coast thing. You keep saying trust deed. I'm thinking loan as a lender to where I create the loan. Are we saying the same thing?
Yes, exactly. That's the same thing. Basically, I think in some of the states they use a term mortgage.
Yes, sir. That's in Florida, it's a mortgage.
Yes.
So if I understand correctly, and I'll just kind of walk you through a scenario that we have here. I have a client of mine that I lend, $35,000 to buy a $70,000 house. So he puts $35,000 down, but he doesn't have the other $35,000. I can go into my 401k, lend him the $35,000, but create a mortgage between my 401k and my client. Correct?
Correct. Exactly correct.
Okay, so that's what you're discussing when you're talking about trust deeds. So then he has to make that payment back, and whether that's a balloon or, we can get into a whole lending podcast, which I do believe we have on the schedule this year. I've got all kinds of availabilities there to do, right? So that we're speaking the same thing, right?
Yes. Now,
Okay.
what you're describing is specific to Florida and some of the other states on the East Coast. What I'm talking about trust deeds is California and some of the other states that do that. And basically, the way that works, pretty much exactly the same thing. But when I do have a business owner who wants to buy a property, they come to me and I give them a loan for the same $35,000, and I write or we write a promissory note. They promising that they're going to pay the loan, and then there is a separate document that is recorded. It's called the trust deed, and trust deed is basically saying that the property is security for the note that they wrote to me. So it's a secured investment.
Okay, so the trust deed and the mortgage are the same things. Those
Yes.
are synonymous because we draw up the note, and then the mortgage is what's filed down at the county that says that there is a note that this property has secured. So I basically have claims. If the note's not paid, I can take the property.
Exactly. And what you mentioned, tax liens. This is another great investment. I personally don't have any experience with that, but I know people who are doing well with that. In fact, some of my clients doing that as well. And if you allow me, Shane, I'm going to read to you just a note that I received from some of my clients, husband and wife team. It's very interesting. I think you'll find it interesting. I'm just going to read a couple of sentences to you.
Please.
So it says here, Royce and Jenny, we are really thankful to have our solo 401k set up and have the freedom to invest in a wider variety of investment options. For us, this has been investing in tax liens in Florida. We just received our first redemption check in the mail. We made 5% in a week investing in 2 tax liens that were paid off within a week of the purchase. So, these folks, multiply 5% times 52 weeks. What's the return that they're getting? About 250%.
You're probably not getting that on Wall Street.
Yeah. So, they doing that. They know the system. Again, if you understand tax liens, if you know how to buy them right, you can make a really nice returns just like these folks.
Yeah, and I agree. And I buy tax liens all the time, and I've actually picked up properties via tax deed. Someone who didn't pay the tax lien off after so many years, you can apply for the tax deed, and if you win it at the auction, then and the couple of properties that I've picked up, nobody bid against me. So I was able to get the property. I turned around and sold the property. I want to say I had a lot. My last deal that happened, I had a lot that I wound up for 3 years paying the tax liens on for $380 a year or something. It was really inexpensive. So I was into the property for $1,000. I pulled it up as a tax deed, foreclosed on it as a tax deed, got the title to the property, and turned around and sold that for about $10,000. So it wasn't a jump up and down money wise, but percentage wise, I'm out $1,000, I get back $10,000. In my world, I'm like, thank you. Can we do that again?
Yes.
So there's all kinds of options, but I know at this point, we're coming up on half an hour into the show. So I know there's some people going, yes, okay, so there's so many options. How do I know what I can, what I can't? How do I stay protected against the big bad IRS? Have you got some safeties that you can help us with or you talk with?
Sure, yeah. I did mention the investment types that are not allowed. Now, let me add on top of that, and that's a very important topic. It's very important that you understand because when you have the freedom, when you've got the checkbook control over your retirement account, with freedom comes responsibility. So you're ultimately responsible for making sure that you don't commit prohibited transaction. So you're not allowed to invest in collectibles, S-Corp, and life insurance contracts with your IRA. But also IRS says that you're prohibited from conducting any business with disqualified person. Now, disqualified person is defined as yourself and your immediate family members. And that's basically you, your spouse, your parents and grandparents, your kids and grandkids, and their spouses. So to give you an example, if you buy a rental property in your 401k, you can't turn it out and rent it to your parents or rent it out to your children or your son's family. You cannot do that. Now, if you buy a fixer-upper that needs work, you bought a foreclosure in your 401k and it needs some work, and let's say your father is a general contractor and does rehab work, you cannot hire your father or his company to do the work on the property because your father is disqualified person. So you cannot do the work yourself, and your immediate family members cannot do the work yourself. So to make it simple and to help you remember this, just think of it vertical line. The vertical people in your relatives are not allowed, but horizontal is fine. You can actually conduct business with your brother or sister or nephew or uncle or niece. That's fine, but not vertical.
Okay, all right. So I can't lend them money either.
Correct. Yeah, if it's a disqualified person, you cannot lend money to disqualified person.
Okay. And I know that we send the stuff to you, or if they sign up through you and you have any questions, I know that I have when I first signed up, because I absorb knowledge quite rapidly. You're readily available, and your staff is readily available to answer questions right off the bat.
Well, Shannon, that's why you invited me on the show, because you've seen the quality of client services that you receive from us, and that's basically who we are, and that's what separates us from the competition. Is we put client first. We want you to have a great experience. We have over 150 testimonials on our website, on social media, and yes, we are readily available. We want you to have a great experience. But what we do is we are very proactive, and we actually educate our clients even before you may have a question. So we have a number of educational webinars. We do educational events locally. We have educational videos. We have knowledge base that you can go to 24/7 and find the answer that you're looking for. So, yes, from that standpoint, I think we have a good system in place to support our clients.
And I agree with you. That's one of the reasons that I am one of your clients, is because you had a great educational. I looked at multiple custodians. In trying to find someone that I wanted to move in, because as I studied this and understood that I could buy the derivatives that I understand, the real estate derivatives that I understand inside of a retirement account, it just made sense. But I needed to find a custodian that could help me navigate the waters with the IRS, because that's the one person I really just don't want to tick off. And Dimitri and his staff were really good, and he's obviously not paying me for this, but well, maybe he will if I can get some floor seats at the Lakers or something. We'll figure that out. His staff is really, really good, and they educate you on what you can do and unlocking assets that you didn't even know you could unlock to better help you during retirement. Because, to be honest, in my thought process, and Dimitri, we're coming to a kind of a close, so I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I see this is you have two choices. Either A, you can let people tell you, or let custodians tell you what you can invest in, and then blame your investments on someone else. Or B, you can educate yourself, find someone like your company, and take on your future yourself. Is that basically sum everything up?
Sean, I think you did a great job summarizing this. The bottom line, it comes to the investment choices that you have available. But and you're right, it does take time, and you do need to take time to educate yourself. What to do. Being a real estate investor is there are some passive investments, but it's still you need to be active, at least educating yourself before you can become a passive investor. But
absolutely,
the fact of the matter is, when you invest, when you have just a conventional investments, the stocks and mutual funds, the question to you is, do you have any control over the investments that you invest in? That's what each and every one of you need to ask yourself. Do you have any control? And let me help you with that. You and I, we have no control over the stock market. We have no control over, the decisions that the company that you invest in making. We have no control over that. But at the same time, if you set up a self-directed account and if you invest in a piece of property, you have control over where you're going to buy that property. You have control over what kind of improvements you can do to that property, which will going to affect the value of the property. You have control over who's going to live in that property, who's going to be the tenants, and you have control over the time and when to exit, because you can study the market. You can have a better understanding. So I think the bottom line is you need to invest in something that you have better understanding and something that you have better control. And yeah, unfortunately, stock market is for most people is not it.
Agreed. Let's touch on one other topic that I know that some of the listeners may be thinking, because I had the same thought when I first got introduced to this, and that is the fact that we know that I can buy a piece of real estate. I know that I can buy derivatives. I know that I can lend to someone else as long as it's not a prohibitive transaction. But what about if I have, let's say, $100,000 in my 401k, and I find a piece of property that is $200,000, and I really like it because I think that either A, I could put some money into it and sell it quickly, or B, I can hold it, if that's the way I want to go. We talked about that earlier, but if that's the way I want to go, hold it. But I don't have enough money. Are there entities out there, banks, credit unions, that will lend to this separate entity, 401k, IRA that we're setting up? Or do I just have to find everything cash? Because one of the biggest reasons that real estate investing is attractive to a lot of people is that you can leverage other people's money. So do you know of any institutions that can help me do that inside of this 401k?
Yes, good question. And number one, let me tell you, because when you buy in a real estate inside of your retirement account, you cannot use conventional financing, because conventional financing is you applying for a loan and you personally providing guarantee, and that's not allowed inside of a retirement account. You're not allowed to provide personal guarantee, so that will not work. But you can get the financing, however, it has to be non-recourse. And non-recourse means that you personally are not responsible for paying that loan. And the property, the underlying property, is the only security for that loan. Now,
okay, wait a minute. Wait, let me just, because you hit on a huge point there. If you buy something inside of your retirement account, you cannot get a recourse loan. Instead, you have to sign for a non-recourse loan, so the bank cannot come after you personally if something happens with that property, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So now, are there institutions willing to take that risk?
Yes, there are several nationwide banks that we work with that specialize in non-recourse financing. Most banks will not do that. So if you're gonna just walk to your local, Wells Fargo or Chase or Bank of America, they're not gonna be able to do that. There might be some local community banks that might be willing to do it, but typically there is a few nationwide lenders that we work with that specialize in this, and they have pretty attractive rates. And typically, because it's a higher risk for the lender, because there is no personal guarantee, the property is the only security that they have. You typically need to come up with at least 30% down. So it's going to be between 30 to 50% down payment, and the rate's going to be a little bit higher. I can tell you that the deal that I mentioned to you in Phoenix that I purchased just under 2 years ago, I've gotten a 5-1 arm loan, and I'm paying 4.875. On a non-recourse loan, that's a really good terms.
Wow! I know about non-recourse loan terms. That is a fantastic term.
Yeah, typically, if you're going to use just private lenders, you're going to be paying double-digit interest. But these lenders, they have pretty good terms.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, and I try and educate a lot of my clients and even my listeners on this show that interest rate itself doesn't matter. I don't care if it's 2% or 40%, as long as the numbers work for me. Obviously, I prefer the 2%, but a 4.8% on a non-recourse loan is, a little crazy. But good on you for getting that. So it takes a little more down payment, and that's okay. In the example that we talked about to begin with, I had $100,000 available. The property that I'm looking at is $200,000. So if I put 30% down, that's $60,000. That leaves me with $40,000 for repairs. But if I can sell the property for $300,000 or $350,000, then that makes sense because now we just pocketed $100,000 to $150,000 inside of our retirement account, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that's something we can do all day long. Dimitri, how do people get a hold of you? Because I obviously recommend you left and right, but I want to put up in the show notes, and if anybody's just listening, how do they get a hold of you to start the education? Have you got a list of maybe some of the videos they can see prior to becoming a client?
Sure. We actually have a great resources on our website. It's everything there is that you need to know, and that's sensefinancial.com. And sense like common sense, SENSE, sensefinancial.com. And you can also call our office, which is 949-228-9394. And we do offer free consultation to anybody. We educate you before talking to you. We'll educate you, have you watch a video so you have a better understanding of the process, and then we'll talk to you and we'll help you decide what's going to be the best for you for your particular situation.
Fantastic. And make sure when you call them that you let them know that you heard on this show you were talking with Shane. And that I think, if I remember correctly, there's a small discount for that. Is that right, Dimitri?
Yeah, everybody who comes from Sean will get a discount, so be sure to mention that.
So, see, there's a benefit besides just the knowledge you get from this. Dimitri, thank you so much for coming on. This has been incredible. I want to reserve the right to bring you back on because I have a feeling we are going to have a lot of questions once this hits the air. So would you mind coming back on if we have a lot of questions?
Sure, we'll be happy to do so.
All right, thanks, Dimitri. Make sure you pay attention. Go back and listen to this episode again. I mean, he gives you so much information so quickly. I know we're running a little longer than our normal episodes, but this was condensed, believe it or not. The amount of information that was given here was condensed. There's so much more. Go visit the website, call them up, get the discount. This is a great way to unlock funds. Dimitri, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next week.